on in Atlanta, Georgia. College Football Hall of Fame, second floor digital drive is where our own Colin Lacy and Brent Osborne been set up all week. They'll stay today and tomorrow as well, with Bart Hyche and Mike Grace hanging out in studio. Today's lineup at day 3 of SEC Football Media Days. Kalen DeBoer of Alabama just wrapped up his time at the main podium. He'll continue to kind of cruise around and hit the other spots as well. Alabama also brought the offensive lineman Caden Proctor, linebacker Deontay Lawson, and defensive lineman Tim Keenan III. Mississippi State is up next. Jeff Lebby will address the main room in a little bit. Plus Blake Shapen, the quarterback, DB Isaac Smith, and wide receiver Brennan Thompson, who you guys spoke to early this morning. Colin Lacy had a chance to talk to the young man, and I gather you were impressed.
Yeah, he's an impressive guy. And I think the thing that you take away, and he said it probably 3 or 4 times in our interview, of the only focus of Mississippi State football right now is going 1-0. 1-0 each week. And I know there's a lot of teams that say that, but I don't know what it was. There's something about everything.
Colin, now.
Do what now?
Love you, and you're trying to get me excited about something.
I'm just telling you, there's something. Every team in the country says, "Oh, we need to go 1-0." That's the press conference. Like, you could record it and play.
We dang sure need to go 1-0.
But just talking to him, the mentality, and Bart, you'll appreciate whenever we get the interview up a little bit later on. I asked him because I've heard from y'all. I have not been to Starkville, but I've heard from y'all the difference of the feel, the community around it. And whenever I ask them the question, and I love that we're doing the video side now, because you can see his face light up whenever you ask him about Starkville. You can see it light up whenever you ask him about Jeff Lebby, because this is the guy that he came and decided to come and play college football for. And for somebody that hasn't necessarily done it, that's a huge part of these guys, of what they're doing. They're going to play for a coach. A lot of them are going to play for a school, but the coach is a huge part of what they are trying to do.
Bart mentions the state needs to go 1-0. You better believe it, because they open on the road at Southern Miss, a Sun Belt team that has been struggling in years past. They've got a new head coach. They got a ton of new transfers as well. The guy from Marshall came in and brought a bunch of guys with him. And this is in Hattiesburg on the road, the start of year 2 for Jeff Lebby, and they really do need to win that game. They don't need to lose to Southern Miss.
I went down there whenever the last time was we played them.
I think it was 2 years ago. Mm-hmm.
And it wasn't the most comfortable. State pulled away at the end, a couple of big plays, but the rock off Hardy Street can get folks. It's been getting folks for years, and this is not a game that Jeff Lebby can lose. This is not a game that you need to go in and just barely win the game either. But this Southern team is good. Yeah. I mean, I don't care what conference you're coming to. It's probably a lateral move conference-wise, maybe even a step down conference-wise possibly. I don't know. That's just based on past years. But when you bring that kind of core to any kind of football team with a leader that they believe in, you going to move all these kids from Ohio to Mississippi? That's a buy-in is what that is. And so I'm nervous, Mike.
Well, again, we know it's year 2 for
Mike.
Yeah.
Are you nervous? Is a State fan or somewhat of one?
Well, I think this is my real problem, man. I have zero expectations for this team. I mean, I don't know what to expect. I pray that it's not another 2-10. I mean, that's what last year was, including a home loss to Toledo. We know they lost Blake Shapen, the quarterback, in week 4. That certainly hurt. But this is a team that ended up winless in league play. And the big reason why, they allowed 34.1 points per game in SEC play, the most porous defense in the SEC a year ago. We talk about Jeff Lebby and his offensive prowess. It's this defense that has to get better for State to win some games.
One of the worst defenses in the history of the SEC last year.
It was bad.
I think that's why a lot of people still not really in on it. A lot of people wanted the DC gone, including Bo Bounds, prominent sportscaster here on
part of our crew down at ESPN 105.9 The Zone in Jackson.
Dinner with him last night.
Yeah.
And them poor people next to us hearing me and him yell at each other about stuff. I mean, that's how Bo and I have always been. I love it when people can disagree.
Yeah.
and like still, I'm like not heated, not but
Right. Yeah.
he thinks that our university should have a bigger focus on football than I do. And I've been very transparent about that. That I don't think the state's ever going to be able to compete year in year out at the level you have to compete in. What does that mean? I have no idea.
But I got to tell you, I've been going through all week pulling highlights from all the SEC teams to build some new creative stuff. Our little rejoins that you hear when we come out of commercial breaks. And I went back and I'm telling you guys, I watched a ton of Dak Prescott highlights. Okay. And I still go back and say, when Dan Mullen had the team and the program number one in the country in the very first college football playoff poll, I mean, that is the peak of Mississippi State football in the history of Mississippi State football. And we kicked that guy out of town.
I don't know about that.
Oh, we did. We kicked him out of town. We did.
Huh?
We made it real easy for him to take Florida's offer. That's what I'm saying. We made it real easy for him to take Florida's offer.
I'm not saying that. I don't think we kicked him out of town. I don't think that's because he was trying to get out of town for 4 years. Fact.
And that may be the case, but I don't know that I just felt like, and again, this is just me. The state fans were on him before he left. And I'm like, really? You guys think we can do better than Dan Mullen?
I would say yes, there were some, because when you get that taste of number one, it makes you elevate yourself to maybe what you might not be. At the same time, I think there were so many fans that were so tired of him going and shopping for jobs every single year. I think that was a big thing that a lot of state's a weird fan base when it comes to football. When you hadn't had a lot of success in things, and like he did, I would have no issue. I love Jeff Lebby. I want him to succeed. But like, if Dan Mullen wins 1 year at UNLV, would a lot of state fans want him back? Would you hire him back if he goes to UNLV and wins in 1 year and state goes 2-10 and is looking for a coach?
I'd take him back today, regardless of what he does at UNLV.
Me too.
And look, I want Jeff Lebby to be successful, but just like Dan Mullen brought that program to their peak, I'm sorry, but last year may have been this program's low point in the history of the program as well.
Tech and 10 was a bad year. The Croom.
That's true. Yeah.
But I maybe it's because I didn't grow up a state fan. I just don't know why so many I'm not talking about you, Mike, but it's in general. State fans have got to realize that we are a stepping stone SEC place. Our destination is not the destination that a lot of people, unless it's baseball like O'Connor,
right? Yeah.
Come and retire in Starkville. How many times have Strickland's gone on to Florida, Burns gone on to Alabama? Burns going to go down as the greatest athletic director in the history of ADs. He literally, his resume, what he's built, where their programs are, football, basketball, baseball right now.
Yeah,
it's basketball, phenomenal. But this is just who we are. Like when somebody gets the job at state, do you think Jeff Lebby got this job and thought he was going to be there? No. So your point, yes, is valid. That I don't think we ran him out of town, but I do feel like we could have done more to help him stay, if that's a fair assessment.
I was just struck, as I say, and again, I haven't lived in the state of Mississippi in a while, but I still have relatives there, and we go back on occasion. I just remember at the time, that last year or so of Dan Mullen, my state fans in the family were ready to get rid of him. And I'm like, I didn't understand what your problem with this guy is.
Kind of like me with Selman right now.
I didn't understand it. Besides Mississippi State today, Billy Napier of Florida will appear at SEC Football Media Days, along with quarterback DJ Lagway, offensive lineman Jake Slaughter, and defensive lineman Caleb Banks. And the afternoon finishes up Brenton Venables, quarterback John Mateer, DB Robert Spears Jennings, and defensive lineman Mason Thomas from Oklahoma. The other newbie in the SEC is the Texas Longhorns, and earlier this week, our friends Colin Lacy and Brent Osborne had a chance to hook up with the voice of the Texas Longhorns, about to begin his 25th season as voice of the Horns. He's hosted the Craig Way Show weekday afternoons from 2 to 5 on AM 1300 The Zone, the official flagship station of Texas Athletics in Austin, Texas. He is Craig Way, voice of the Longhorns, visiting with us inside the press box.
Getting up with Craig Way, the voice of the Texas Longhorns, and I know the last 12, 15 months has been a little crazy around Austin. Joining the SEC last year, what was that first trek through the SEC, not just with football, but with every sport? What was it like around there?
Yeah, it's a great question, Colin. And I think what, from a football perspective, last year's first year did for Texas was to give them an opportunity to do a couple of things. One, that whole question about is Texas SEC ready? There was that. And by the way, I'm perfectly fine with that question because what it did was it supplanted a lot of the is Texas back? Texas is back stuff. I mean, the Longhorn football program is still paying for the sins of Joe Tessitore, who uttered that, when they had that double overtime win over Notre Dame. But anyway, it gave them a chance to answer the question about are they SEC ready, and they proved that they were. But even more so, I think it gave fans not only in the SEC but across the country, and certainly Longhorn fans, a chance to see all the work that Sark and the staff had put in to build the depth, quality depth, to add his co-offensive coordinator, the offensive line coach Kyle Flood likes to refer to as big humans, adding the big humans on the offensive line and the defensive line. I think it's a very, very big thing. And I think it gave them a chance to do that. The other sports, I think, kind of fed off of it. Basketball, men's basketball took a little bit of a step back. Obviously, they got into the NCAA tournament but lost in the first four. But now they've made the coaching change. There's a lot of excitement about what Sean Miller may be able to do. And in addition to broadcasting the football and men's basketball, also do the women's basketball. And Vic Schaefer has done a tremendous job there and got them to the Final Four last year. And they shared the SEC regular season title with South Carolina. And baseball in their first year wins the SEC regular season. Had they not lost their number one starter and their number three starter and a reliever to injury 3/4 of the way through the year, they might have had a chance to go deeper than just the regional round. So there's a great, and then softball wins the national championship. So there was a lot of excitement around that first year. And I would say it leads to a lot of anticipation and, yes, expectation for the next year.
Yeah, so leading into more of a football aspect and moving into the SEC, of course, the goal is always to win a national championship, and no matter what division you're in or whatever. And so my question is with coming up a little bit short of that, do you feel like Texas feels like they kind of reached what their goal was last year with their first year being in the SEC, of making the SEC championship and playing for a championship? Again, coming up just short of making it to the national championship, but still proving themselves to be ready, like we say, for the SEC.
Some goals were realized, Brent. Some were, and those were to show how nationally competitive they could be, to go to an Ann Arbor and beat Michigan, to be really, really good on the road. But there were other goals they didn't reach. They lost twice to Georgia, clearly, at home in a game where they really were just outplayed and outmuscled in about every sense of the word. But here in Atlanta, they take Georgia in overtime and had an opportunity, several opportunities to win the game, didn't do it. And then, of course, came back here, and there was another goal realized a couple of weeks later after they had gone into the playoff and won a home playoff game. That's the first time that Texas had won a playoff game, because the year before it was only a 14 field, and they got to the semifinals before losing to Washington. So they won a playoff game, came back here, won that massive double overtime thriller with Arizona State. Again, more goals realized, but the job wasn't finished, and losing to Ohio State in the Cotton Bowl proved that as well. So there was meat left on the bone. There were things out there they still wanted to accomplish, even though by and large they were pleased with a lot of what they did.
Whenever everybody talks about Texas football, especially going into this season, the first thing that seems to come up is Arch Manning and what he is going to be coming up this season. You saw flashes of him last year, but we talked about it a little bit earlier this week. A lot of times when he came into a ball game, you felt like you knew what was going to happen. He was going to be running the football. What does that look like in your estimation, and how overblown is the Arch Manning talk nationally as opposed to what it is in Austin?
Well, first of all, to your first part, the work that he has put in has been impressive to see what he does in terms of command of the offense. Yes, his mobility is a big part of it, but also he has a strong arm and can throw the ball well also. So I think all of that needs to be taken into account. The fact that he's handled everything so well, I think, is important. It is interesting. You bring up the how overblown things are in terms of the expectation. Well, it didn't just start last year, and it certainly didn't just start this year. I was upstairs a few minutes ago doing an interview with Arch. And when I got done, and I was talking also to Michael Taff and Anthony Hill, who were here with the Longhorns, who walks into the room to say hi to him but David Cutcliffe. And, of course, Coach Cut had coached Eli at Ole Miss, and he coached at Duke, and he was Peyton's offensive coordinator at Tennessee, and is just a well-respected football mind and a great coach, and now is on the SEC staff. And, of course, he was Eli's college coach. So he told the story that he was still the coach at Ole Miss when Arch was born. And on the morning that Arch was born, Coach Cutcliffe sent a courier with a letter of intent over to the hospital. So the expectation has been there for a while for Arch. So I think he's excited and looking forward. I asked each of those guys what they're looking forward to most once this season gets underway. And one of the things he said was, I'm looking forward to be able to run with the ones on offense.
Yep.
And so I think he's looking forward to that challenge.
Was there a certain area that you would say for Texas last year that kind of maybe underperformed a little bit throughout the season, and you're kind of maybe a question mark going into this season and how they're going to do?
Well, I know they weren't entirely happy with the kicking game, either kicking or punting. Bert Auburn made a lot of big kicks for Texas. He hit 4 out of 6 in the SEC championship game. But he missed 2 out of 3, obviously, in that Peach Bowl. Some important ones there. He left. Wish him well. Hope it goes well for him down in Coral Gables. The fact that they have the transfers in, they do have, and Sark pointed this out when I was visiting with him a few minutes ago. He likes the fact they have a senior kicker, a senior punter, a senior holder, and a senior snapper. So they have addressed that. They have a good return game, but they weren't entirely happy with the kicking game. And there's questions, obviously, with the offensive line being relatively new, even though guys got a lot of reps who will be starters. And then in the secondary, there'll be some young faces. There'll be some veterans like Michael Taff, obviously. And Manny Muhammad wasn't listed as a starter that much last year, but he played an awful lot. So there's some new guys to go with the old.
Whenever you look at the offensive side for Texas, I think a part that gets overlooked across the board is that running back room and how good they were at times, especially last year. You look at Wisner, and Baxter even came into his own, especially late in the season. What is it about that side of the ball that Sark feels really good about?
Yeah, the fact that he's got some healthy guys, and Trey Wisner made it all the way through. He was banged up a little bit. Jaden Blue gave them so much last year, and the Dallas Cowboys obviously noticed that for them to go after Blue. And C.J. Baxter, his freshman year was so exciting, and so there was so much excitement about him before he had the injury that took him out for the whole year. But he's back, and Christian Clark is another guy who can step in there and do it. So they're excited about what they have in the backfield there. Hopefully, if Baxter is able to have a full recovery and go full out, then I think they have high hopes for him. There was another thing Sark told me when I asked him about health. He said there's only 1 or 2 guys that could be a lot slower on the path back in fall camp workouts. Just about everybody else. He said, now, we would be crazy to say C.J. Baxter, go out there and just blast away and go right from the first day of camp. It's going to be a process, but he does like what he has with him there.
Yeah, I want to touch on, you were talking about the offensive line a little bit, kind of a question mark on that. And that's one thing I think that a lot of people probably noticed in the games that there weren't very many, but in the games that Texas did struggle in a little bit last year was pass protection, that kind of stuff, obviously against Georgia, which I know a lot of people struggled with Georgia's defensive line last year. So I guess how is it looking throughout this offseason? How did spring go? How does Sark think that the spring went as far as offensive line?
Well, and it goes back to that depth question, Brent, when we were talking about building up the quality depth there so that, a guy like Cole Hudson, who wasn't technically a starter last year, but played a lot of snaps, can be ready to go. Neto Omeazulu, also another guy who can step in there. Brendan Baker's a guy. Trevor Gooseby had to play in key moments when Kelvin Banks was out. So there's guys who had a lot of snaps, even though they weren't quote-unquote starters other than Campbell. So there's a good feeling about what's there.
Absolutely.
Again, Craig Way, the voice of the Texas Longhorns. Appreciate you taking some time with us, and looking forward to the big one at Ohio State to start things off at the end of August.
You know what? 20 years ago, Texas went into Columbus, and they had some stuff to prove. USC was the unquestioned number one team in the country, but Texas knew that if they could find a way to win that game, and Ohio State was number 2 at the time, and if they could go in there and find a way to win that game, then they'd have a path toward playing for the national title. They beat Ohio State, and then they were, as they like to say in NASCAR, running in clean air. They were out front of everybody else other than USC all the way to the Rose Bowl. Well, now I think it's safe to say that either Texas or Ohio State will probably be number 1, and who isn't number 1 will be number 2. I know this. Whoever wins that game is probably going to be number 1, but there's still a path for whoever loses that game because of the high profile and high stakes venture that it is, that unlike 2005 where only the top 2 are going, 12 get into the playoffs. So it's a great test, but it doesn't have to be the be-all, end-all.
And I will tell you that Mr. College Football, Mr. Tony Barnhart himself yesterday said he sees Texas going in and upsetting them in the horseshoe.
Wow.
Yep.
Well, if he said it
yesterday, so
if Mr. College Football said that, if Tony Barnhart said it, it must be true.
Yep.
I'll take his word for it.
Absolutely.
Greg, appreciate the time.
Thanks, Colin.